Thanks for joining in, and you're watching The Art of Pressing Play.
You're watching.
You are watching
The Art of Pressing Play.
The Art of Pressing Play.
I'm Isis Graham, and you're watching The Art of Pressing Play.
If you've gone to any show, club, sports game, wedding, party, or really any sort of outing where there was music playing, even listened to the radio, there's a good chance that you've encountered a DJ. Over the years, it seems as if both the interest and demand for DJs has increased exponentially. We can't just get enough of adding music into different moments in our lives, and masterful DJs are the ones that can turn what may seem like a simple playlist on shuffle to a carefully curated sonic storyboard that takes the listener on a ride that they didn't even know they were on. It's really simple to observe a pro making things look easy, but today we're going to talk to several Calgary-based DJs and really dive into their art, the process of being a DJ, how to become a pro, and see what it's really like.
My name is John Delirious, music producer, DJ, and musician from Calgary.
My name is Isis Graham. I'm also known as Isette here in Calgary, well, in the west coast of Canada, but a lot of people will just refer to me as Isis Graham. I've been DJing in Calgary since 1999, and I came to DJing and performing in live acts and electronic music through the rave scene in 1997. So it's been a wild journey, and it feels like it's been a long time.
Dara Nistara, Siza Calum Simeon Ata, Sinase Kucha from Sutina Nation. My name is Calum Simeon. I'm from Sutina Nation. I am part Dene, part Cree. I'm also the talent director for Drumbeat Entertainment here in Calgary, Alberta, located in Treaty 7 lands. I am a DJ of 31 years and would love to play for another 31 more.
Yeah, Ginik Sokwa Nastuanako Gakandukadupi. My traditional name is Early Morning Rider. My English name is Richard Sparvier. I go by Blackfoot as my entertainment alias. Yeah, I'm a DJ, producer here in Calgary, Mokinsis, and I've been doing it for about 5 years now.
To learn about music back in my era when I was a kid, you either had to read about it in a magazine, or like a friend had to tell you about a band, or you had to like get a tape given to you. It's different era. And so I discovered DJing and the art of DJing through watching Much Music, which is a TV channel that showed videos back in the day, for those of you who don't know. Shout out Rap City. And I was watching a program called Rap City where they would do a half-an-hour highlight on hip-hop. And this is like late 80s, very late 80s, almost early 90s era of hip-hop. And so I thought it was the coolest music. I'd never heard it before. So stoked, and I just kind of became inspired looking at these guys going, like, this music is so different and so exciting. I don't quite get it, but I love it. And then I was looking at this DJ with these turntables and some records, and I'm like, what? And I was instantly just drawn to it. I remember begging my mom to let me go to Radio Shack and buy a DJ mixer. It was $100 back then. And I saved up my money, and she kind of helped me out a little bit. And I went to Radio Shack, like, R.I.P. Radio Shack, and I bought this realistic mixer. I still have it. It's so old school looking now. It's like there's a click in the crossfader. So you have like faders, and then it would go right in the middle, like click, and then you'd go to the other side, which is so not what we have today's standards, but 2 big VU meters. And I bought this mixer, hooked up my mom's turntable, figured out how to hook up a tape deck, because I had the tape deck, and I would play songs from tape, and then I would just scratch my mom's records over top of it, and I could play the two at the same time. And that right there was the beginning of my journey, where I could be creative and actually learn to put sounds on top of sounds.
So as I was getting introduced to music at the age of 17 is when I really, like I said, kind of got that understanding of what turntables were and the mixer and what it all does. And then getting the odd chance to actually, stand beside the DJ while they got to go to the bathroom break. Oh, great. You get to play the next record or the next 2 records. They're running to the canteen to go get a drink while you have a chance to play a record or 2 for them. So that was a really good intro to it, but not like a full-on performance. So no worries. Full-on performances actually came when I moved to Saskatchewan, started playing in nightclubs there. Shout out to my late friend, Ren Davies. He and I started playing together in 1991 in Regina, Saskatchewan in the clubs. He's 19, I'm 18, you got to be 19 there. So I started sneaking me into the bars to start DJing in the clubs with him. So that's when I started playing out. And then when I went to Edmonton one summer, I went into a clothing store and there was some music that was playing, underground music. There was a table with a bunch of flyers right by the cash register for all these different parties that were going on. The guy introduced me to what a real rave was and said, you really got to check this out. We got tickets on sale. Here's the address. Go check it out. I said, fantastic. So I went, had a great time, went back the next day, thanked him for like letting me know the party was there. Then just telling him that I was a DJ as well. He was telling me he collects music. So we decided to swap tapes, mixtapes. And this guy was the first introduction to what trance music was for me. And that really blew me away. So at various points, well, it's like somebody's passing a baton. I'm getting the baton for what it is at that moment. I'm running with it, passing it off to somebody else. And all of a sudden, somebody's got another baton for me. And it's totally different formats of music, different genres, different histories, different cultures. You know, just going deeper into the rabbit hole with every different genre and just learning the histories and the culture behind it and the scenes. So constantly every day, like it's just, even to this day, I'm still learning about new genres and introducing myself to them, kind of getting submersed in them as well.
It wasn't until I was in my undergrad at the University of Calgary where I really got involved in electronic music as a DJ. Pretty much no time in the Calgary scene, and I was already out there in Vancouver. I didn't know anybody in the city, but I followed my friend Shayana Kootenay, who goes by the name of DJ Cookham. And I messaged her when I was out there, and I was like, hey, you know, I'm just moved here from Calgary. I don't know anybody. I think that what you're doing is really cool as a Indigenous DJ. You know, maybe sometime we can jam out together. And then she just messaged me back like right away, and she's like, do you want to come open up for me tonight? And I was just like, oh, yeah, that was pretty quick. And I was just like, yeah, sure. So, you know, I took my first hop at an opportunity, and I jumped right into it.
When I was doing these parties and getting to know everyone and networking and booking the DJs, that I actually saw John Delirious, who's like, I would consider him my mentor, sort of my biggest influence in the rave scene in Calgary. I saw him play at a rave in Edmonton, and he was just playing these amazing house records. And it was like, there's moment, I think everyone has this moment where they finally know the difference between house and techno or jungle and breaks, and you finally go, aha! I can understand what's going on here. And I saw him playing this amazing house set in the basement of the Polish Canadian Club in Edmonton, and I was like, I want to DJ. And that was that. I just got hell-bent on doing it. And so I think it was 6 months later that I saved up enough money to buy gear, and actually with the help of my older stepsister, she actually helped me buy the gear, which I'm eternally grateful for. But I finally got the stuff and then started collecting records, which, you know, is still a lifelong, once you start collecting records, you just do it forever, but yeah. So here we are, 23 years later.
I love listening to each person talk about their unique journey, of how they first fell in love with music and then decided that they wanted to share that love with others. The development of the Calgary rave and DJ scene has had its ups and downs, but what hasn't changed over the years are the dedicated artists and supporters that bring this scene to life.
Hi, I'm Jay Michael. I'm a DJ. I'm a music fanatic. I'm an event promoter. I'm also a sound engineer, and I just really love to dance.
My name is Leah McClure. People may remember me from hitting dance floors since I was 16.
What the scene kind of was like when I first got involved with it was interesting, kind of like right at probably just past the peak of when like dance music really exploded as a phenomenon in Calgary. And strangely, as I got more and more involved in it, it was almost like we were on the tail end of that explosion. And interestingly enough, like dance music pretty much completely died in Calgary for, you know, probably a solid 10 years or so. Like it was at a point where people were doing these massive shows in like, you know, Max Bell Arena or in like Roundup Center and stuff like that. And Calgary brought a really controversial law into place called the Calgary Rave Bylaw. And it basically limited people's ability to throw dance parties if it exceeded a certain amount of, people, and like you had to have like, lots of medical staff and security and all this kind of stuff. And it really just kind of fizzled the scene out in a way. I really developed as an artist, I think, on the coast, more so than I did here. But, when I came back to Calgary as more of like a seasoned artist, at that point, I was still very DIY in nature. So, me and my soon-to-be wife at the time she was the reason why I ended up moving back to Alberta anyways. But we started throwing our own events. We worked with a great venue down on First Street called Endeavor Arts, and we threw like dozens of shows over 5 or 6 years with really popular, not popular, but really like established acts from all over the world. And I just wasn't really ever playing for other people. It was always like we were just kind of creating our own things, and the draw of the rave scene or the electronic underground music scene was, it really was, in my opinion, like a safe haven for like the oddballs, the freaks, the geeks, like all of the people who just didn't really fit into like normal, like popular culture, right? So those people never left and they never stopped dancing. Like those people kept that scene going after like the main popular kind of a crash of dance music that happened did its thing or whatever. But yeah, it was really interesting, the city, because it was almost like dancing became kind of like a bad word almost, like people are like, oh, like I would never go to a rave, like that's, that's silly or whatever, right? But little did they know, like even though these big shows weren't happening anymore, there was still, great underground music events happening in like strange corners of the city.
The scene, it's gone up and down, and it's had some great years, and it's had some years where it's really struggled. A lot of the years where it's struggled has been due to bylaws and government and municipalities shutting down the scene. For example, back in the warehouse days, there were, yes, illegal raves. But when it was really starting to pick up some steam in both Calgary and Edmonton, there was some gang violence in the scene and some overdoses, and that led a lot of politicians to come in and just shut down the scene and shut down that community and the ability to throw events. So that really pushed it underground. Something that has always been consistent has been CJSW. CJSW, the University of Calgary radio station. They have always been consistent in showing that underground music exists and that it flourishes in other countries, such as the UK, Chicago, Detroit, these big epicenters outside of Canada have really told us that electronic music is here. It is here to stay. And while sometimes it may be pushed underground in Calgary and Edmonton and arguably across Canada, it still exists and it's thriving and it's not going anywhere. And now it is really gained so much attention, especially throughout COVID. I find a lot of people outside of demographics like myself have really understood all the different genres of electronic music, and it's just getting that recognition that it deserves.
Though upon initial glances, it may not seem it, but there is a beautiful breadth of diversity in Alberta's music scene, including an intricate network of Indigenous artists supporting one another while sharing their stories, voices, and music with new audiences.
A pretty trying first year for sure. When I was in Vancouver, it was an interesting phenomenon of music, especially Indigenous music out there. It was something that we didn't have here in Calgary, or that wasn't established at all here in the city. And it was interesting to go to shows with Indigenous artists and see, a bunch of Indigenous people there all supporting one another. And then you go to like different shows and it would be the same group of people there supporting one another at every show. So I got involved with the community. I got to meet a bunch of people who I'm still friends with to this day, who are some of my best friends. And as I was finishing up my time in Vancouver, I realized, that we didn't have anything like that back home, and I was going back to a city where it didn't seem like there was space for Indigenous artists to kind of thrive on our own, with our own people. And so, I was in business school at the time. I was taking an entrepreneurship course, and I was like, man, why don't I just start it myself? And, that's how Drumbeat Entertainment was born, through seeing a lack of representation in the community, seeing a lack of places where we can support one another, and just seeing a scarcity for Indigenous music. And so, came back and was in that entrepreneurship course, and 2018, February 2018, we had our first show as Drumbeat Entertainment. Well, we used to call ourselves Drumbeat Productions at the time, and we brought my friend DJ Cookham, who set me up in Vancouver. And then after that, we got booked for Easttown Get Down. We also got booked for Sled Island, and we sold out Commonwealth with the Snotty Nose Res Kids. And it really started as an idea of, I just want to throw shows no matter the genre, and just support Indigenous artists like that. But I realized rather fast, especially as a business student, that throwing an event with like a band or anything like that is a pretty high overhead cost. And so, it was pretty quick that I realized, okay, well, I don't think we're not making a lot of money here with all these bands, so let's just focus on electronic music and rap and hip hop shows, which we did. And those have been, almost sell out every time. And came to the point where, when I started Drumbeat, I started reaching out to venues, and I reached out to Habitat Living Sound, RIP, hold a big place in my heart for those guys, Mikey DeRosa, Kerry Chang, Matt Kane. They really gave us the first opportunity as a venue to host our Indigenous events. And, prior to Habitat being closed down, we were one of their monthly spots there. So, once we built the community, we realized rather quick that people were willing to support.
Yeah, Drumbeat Entertainment, how that came about was probably about 5 years ago. I remember one of my coworkers had asked me if I had ever heard of Drumbeat, to which I told him, never heard of it. He's, check this out. He gave me a flyer. So I took a look at it, and he said, this guy's from Sixiga. He goes by DJ Blackfoot. I don't know if you know him, but maybe reach out to him on social media, see what the guy's events are, see if you can get involved in his parties. So I remember reaching out to Richard, DJ Blackfoot, on social media, and he had already done his first 2 parties, and I had missed out on the second one, but he said, stay in touch, send me your social links, we'll be in touch. I'd like to keep you in mind for future events, which I thought was fantastic. About a month later, I got a phone call, and he had asked if I'd be available to play on this particular date, opening up the room, because it was myself, then DJ Painted Horse, his name is Racy Big Snake, and then our headliner for the night, Sean Beaver. So I said, yeah, I would love to. So played the event, we stayed in touch, and supported his events and his nights that he had at the now legendary Habitat Living Sound nightclub, which RIP Habitat, I wish it stayed, but that's where I had first gotten involved at a Drumbeat event. And we had seen each other around, we stayed in contact, but nothing really had evolved. Richard was still doing his events. I was just one of the DJs that he would book at that time, as was Sean. Then AmCon 2018 had happened, and we had all met there again and started hanging out and introducing ourselves to a lot of other producers, network promoters, doing a lot of networking, really. And in that time, we had noticed there was a lot of other Indigenous DJs that we had met, so we all hung out together as a crew. And from that, I guess that's where it pretty much spawned. We wanted to stay together, work together, look at how we could network and help each other, helps amplify each other, whether it was our music, shows, mixes. And then we kind of came together as a collaborative Nietzsche network, is just a bunch of Nietzsche's, native people just hanging out, producers, DJs, just hanging out, doing shows. Richard had spawned the idea of the 3 of us working together having different roles inside Drumbeat with the same goal of amplifying Indigenous DJs, artists, producers. How can we give them a platform to be able to introduce themselves and their music to the world, not only just the Indigenous market or the Indigenous community, but also around the globe? So we looked from there, how could we do that? And then we started planning together shows, planning together workshops, planning anything and everything we can to kind of open up the eyes of other artists that are inside the Indigenous or the Métis community across North America, and kind of come together and just start, once again, collaborating, working together, finding ways that we could help amplify each other's voices, their events, their music, their production events. And then when the pandemic hit, Drumbeat started doing our virtual powwow festivals. And the first one caught the attention of the Washington Post in the US, which we thought was phenomenal. It was a great article and a great story and write-up. Through the virtual powwow festival, that's when we started reaching out to all sorts of DJs, producers, label owners all across Canada and the US, even as far south as South America. So it's been really great since jumping on board to be able to meet these new artists, build relationships, find new music, nurture those relationships, and just introduce everybody so they can collaborate. We've had about 6, 7 different artists all get together for different parts of Canada and work on music together and send those parts back and forth and then be able to put it together and make a release for it, which has been fantastic.
Tansei, Tawau. My name is Sean Beaver. I'm an electronic Indigenous artist from Driftball Cree Nation. I think from where it stemmed was building the collective of Indigenous artists, creators, DJs, producers, and anybody within the field of electronic music within the community around Edmonton, Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, throughout essentially North America, and then build the collective from there to where we are now. Me being part of Drumbeat as the artistic director, Richard being the manager, Kaylin Simeon being the talent director. We had also built a nice collective that was of friends of friends of friends of Indigenous DJs, producers, that we now have on Facebook as a group chat from amateurs or somebody who's starting new, fresh, all the way up to industry recording artists, Juno winners in our group chats. And that was a huge help for a lot of people that weren't really doing anything through pandemic. And so we were able to build essentially different live shows and live streams that we'd call virtual powwow festivals throughout the pandemic. And so it, I guess it helped escalate from what we were doing to where we are, to what we are doing now. And having the ability to do it in real life is great.
As Richard would say, he started the fire. The rest of us came together and just kept it burning. And then we reached out to others across Turtle Island and brought them to help that fire grow. And being a major part of that within the group of the 3 of us has been an amazing experience to be able to reach out and meet new people and just know that we're helping anybody and everybody who has an idea and a vision and talent and direction. Just give them that jump off point, or at least contribute in one form or another to help them get to that next stage on their journey. And that's been the journey with Drumbeat so far.
Yeah, I think, from here, possibly going the route of maybe an artist agency or even, a record label, just the possibilities are kind of endless. But definitely, expanding the vision to include other major Canadian cities, to continue pushing forth the support for Indigenous music and Indigenous artists. Because while there might be support for individual artists, sometimes communities don't have that big network of community like that like we have. And so I'd love to bring that to other cities and show them that, what's possible when you invest in the original people of the land. We can bring it just as well as anybody else can.
Throughout this documentary, there has been a huge percentage of artists talking about habitat living sound.
everyone in the music, especially in Calgary, the music scene, they know of Isis Graham. So one day, you know, I was already kind of playing acoustic music on top of beats and singing along to it and doing a live show. It wasn't until I played this fundraiser show where Isis actually at the time was doing sound. And she came up to me and she said, this is what you're doing is like really cool. Like I want to have you out for a Girls on Deck show and kind of, you know, connect with people. So we kept in touch and I did end up playing that show. And that's kind of how I got introduced into the DJ community, was through Isis actually. And it wasn't until I met her, like that's how I started. And that's how I got involved with Habitat Living Sound when they were open at the time, and how I got my first DJ gig at Habitat, and that was really cool.
Isis Graham has been one of the key players in helping develop the Calgary music scene and also encouraging its diversity. So we're going to get to know Isis a little better and her involvement in the Calgary music scene.
Growing up, my mother was really into rock and roll, and she loved to play music in the house all the time. So I had music in my life pretty much right away from the onset. So my aunt and uncle, or my aunts, were all pianists, and there was different people in our family who were classical musicians, classically trained. But the one thing that happened for me was around age 6, my mom had a record player, and then she had a double tape deck in our living room. And my favorite thing, and there's actually tapes that exist, was to play her records. And then she had a microphone, and I would do these little radio shows, and I would record them with the music. So I'd be like, this is the Beatles now. And now today our special guest is my sister. And I'd have her come in and do like a little guest spot. So like at a really young age, I was totally into broadcasting and was curious by it. Actually, a friend of my older stepsister's, he asked me if I wanted to go to a rave. So this would have been March 1997, and I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know what the word rave meant. I didn't know what he was talking about, but it was a Saturday night, and I was up to no good, and I said, yes. And I said, what time does this thing end? And he's like, 6 in the morning. And I'm like, oh my God, my dad is gonna kill me. So off we went, and it was actually this party called Paradise, and it was at the all-school skate park, which was in the industrial park behind Chinook Mall. And it was this really radical place with all these skateboard ramps, and they had DJs underneath the ramps, and then you could party on the ramps. And guys like John Delirious and Art Attack and Honey Mustard, of course, she was the queen back then. They were all playing, a guy named Tryptamine. They were all playing, and like I walked into this loud, obnoxious, reverberating skate park. It was like, because acid techno is a thing. And I was immediately hooked. Like, I just was like, whoa, what is this? And I saw the guys DJing and thought, I want to do that. But I just, before it occurred to me that I really wanted to do it, it was just so different and so wild and so completely removed from what I was experiencing as a early teenager in my day-to-day life. I was like, I'm into this. And so from that moment on, like back in that time, you would be leaving the rave and you'd get flyers for the next one. So I would just grab the flyer and then make plans to go to the next weekend's rave. And we would get like a group of us. I made new friends, which was awesome. The rave scene sort of embraced me in a way that the real world never did. I felt immediately at home and comfortable in that space. And so it didn't surprise me just very soon after that I wanted to like throw parties, help throw parties. It sort of married my love for arts and crafts and creating stages and making environments, broadcasting, with music and with friendships and feeling a part of something. So with the 90s going on, then we got into the 2000s where everything was just exploding. You know, I was obviously doing the DJing, doing it no matter what. At the point when I started DJing in Calgary, I think there was 3 other female DJs, Honey Mustard, Double D, and the Lotus Queen would be the 3 that I could really give some major credit to because they were like the queens. Anyways, they were the ones that were, to me, the true ultimate pioneers in their field here in Calgary. So But they were also kind of wildly inaccessible. They were women that they were kind of like the unicorn. There wasn't a lot of them, so they were not very accessible to be mentors. You didn't naturally have a mentorship path as a woman in the early 2000s, that's for sure. I just was like, I want to play like they do. I want to be with them. I want them to respect me. I want to be good at this art where it's mostly men. So being a woman really isn't the point. Like, it's not why I'm doing this because I'm a girl. That had nothing to do with it. But it was pretty obvious that, you know, there was only a few of us on the come up at that point, like Molly Phi and some others, Jenny Adrenochrome, and gosh, there's lots of more women from Edmonton at that point. But at that point, it sort of became clear that I wasn't gonna have direct mentorship, even though John Delirious was my idol and to be honest, one of my greatest friends now. People gate-kept information in a way back then that is just completely not comparable to what people perceive as gatekeeping now. Like, let me tell you, there's this perception that people are gatekeeping now, and what we're gatekeeping is access to venues and opportunities to play. But how I viewed gatekeeping when I was coming up was you could not just go on the internet and learn how to DJ. There was not controllers with instructions. It was like, if you wanted to learn, you had to just do it. So gatekeeping information like how to play, how to even get the stuff connected, where to buy it, records at the record stores here, and like, rest in peace Ferocious, rest in peace Euphoria, rest in peace Phonics, but they were great record stores, but they all had like amazing DJs working at them, like the ones that we idolized. And those guys would like pick all the best stuff out, and they will tell you this themselves. But like, you know, you were always kind of getting the scraps of what was left over, and all the best DJs in town had the best records. And you have to consider that in the 90s, you know, a record came out and it would be 300 copies of that. That's only 300 people on the earth that have that. So if one copy ends up rolling into a Calgary record store, then only one guy's getting it. And it became pretty obvious to me pretty early that it was gonna take some serious innovation and getting creative to sort of stand out in a scenario where that information and data, which was the songs and the collection and the taste and having music, was being really gatekept by a very specific group of people. For me, what that looked like was traveling outside of Calgary, going to other places, visiting record stores in Toronto and Chicago and Vancouver, to try and create my own brand of sound. So after I kind of got through that sort of, what do we call that, obstacle, then the next obstacle was like, who are gonna be the people that I'm gonna come up with? Like, who's my generation? Who are the people I connect with? That's how Krista, Molly Phi, and I initially came together. She was DJing. She was playing hard house and breakbeats, and she was like, I want to throw an all-girls party, because it was like, there was a few of us now coming up, 4 or 5, and we could throw up an event at a space and have a whole night's worth of music with just women. When I met Krista, and immediately we were like inseparable, because we are both hilarious, ridiculous human beings. So it was immediate connection, and then, so Girls on Decks was born with Jenny as well, Jenny Adrenochrome, who's a jungle DJ. And we started throwing these parties at, I think it was called Boys Town, the gay bar on 17th Ave. It was the best. It was just like us 3 women and like 400, mostly gay men at that time, because that's what gay bars really looked like at that point. And it was amazing. Like, they just loved whatever you would give to them, and they loved the house music, and they loved dancing, and it felt safe. And that was just such a lucky strike. We eventually did a website, and we're hosting girls' mixes, and started to grow. Women started to play, women started to DJ. But around 2006, I'm gonna put a date on it, like around 2006, we started to see the number of women interested in DJing go up, just all across the board. And it was less male-dominated. We saw an explosive, dramatic increase of women DJing, and we started advocating for, you know, equity in lineups in the later 2010s. When I say we, I mean every woman that was DJing at the time. With the onset of Bass Coast Festival, which was a very big turning point in Western Canada, coming in, being a female-run festival, the advocacy for equity started to increase. It started to become a louder cause, and Calgary really was the first place to embrace that, I think in a commercial way. Nightclub lineups started to shift. We started to see women getting more prominent slots. And now, if we look at today in 2022, there is mostly a woman on every lineup. And we have over 130 female DJs in this city, which is a lot. Like if you, comparatively, I don't think there's anywhere else that has that kind of per capita other than maybe Berlin. And I say that without a data source, but I would be wagered to bet that that's probably pretty accurate. We have that legacy here, and it's a no-brainer for us. It's not unusual, it's just normal. So when women show up and want to do something in that space, it's like, yeah, of course. There's not that, I hope, anyways, my hope is that they're not met with that resistance. Now, I understand that there's always resistance in everything you do, so you just have to get over it and keep going. I think what my fans expect from me and what they demand from me and what I really hope they get every time is just a full of love. Did you like that sound effect? And I really mean that. I think when you listen to me play, when you see me in person anyways, you can just, for me on the other side of the decks, it's palpable that I'm trying to make you feel loved. And because I feel loved, these songs make me feel loved. Especially lately, I've really come back around to like more classic house sounds. But the vibe is so important to me, and that's why I continue to play house music, is because it's a spiritual music, and it's celebratory, and it's got so much humanity in it all the time. Like, I just love it. It's so raw, and there's lots of emotion and lots of like passion. And I hope that people get that. I want the big feelies. I want us to feel something together. I want us to move through the whole plateau of different emotions and go out and then come back again. And I think I can safely say now that I'm able to do that every time.
What a vast and passionate DJing scene we have blooming here in Alberta. The more I learn about what people have cultivated and created, I'm just in awe of the talent and skill there is. And this is only one of the many sides of the electronic live music community we've explored. There is so much more to learn. Tune in to the next episode for Modular Mayhem.